When it comes to the second part of Jobless Reincarnation, it seems that they shy away from the more controversial parts of the show and instead focus on developing the characters, showing us more of their world, and also getting to the plot points which fans have been waiting on. To summarize, just part two, Rudy, Eris, and Rudger, I don't know how to pronounce his name, they continue their travels in hopes of finding Zenith, finding Sylphie, and also finding Paul and others. In the pursuit of this, they barely miss Roxy a few times. Paul does get met, and him and Rudy have a bit of a row. But in the long run, you can see that through the years that Paul and Rudy have been away from each other, both have grown as people as well as the people around them. And coming to a reconciliation is perhaps one of the top, if not best, parts of the show. However, it's shown by the time we reach the final episode that Rudy still has a long way to go. But in the last two episodes, sort of recapping his journey up until now, you're pushed to realize that while he does still have a long way to go, he has come so far. There is a slew of highlights when it comes to this show, and just to begin, it's that we still are adventuring and continue this world building that makes it so, even though it's a bit mind-boggling to consider how many places that Rudy go to and trying to collect all the different information about the places, just the fact that we are still interested in all these places and what they have to offer is saying something, considering this is one of the few shows that reach, especially anime, that reach 23 episodes without it feeling like there's ever a filler episode or something boring going on. And I would contribute that to us just meeting different types and not just seeing the same people remix. Whether you're talking about just Lane's people who we meet this season or Kerr, whatever, whether we're talking about finding out what happened to Paul and everyone else after the event happened, seeing what happened to Eris's parents and family, and even Roxy's own adventure, which leads to her going back home. So much is shown in terms of people traveling, seeing different parts of the world, and how both they affected and how it was affected by them, that it creates so many, like a flash of memories that I feel overwhelmed by. Another highlight when it comes to the season are the battles. Now, when it comes to this season, the battles are less about fighting giant monsters or anything like that. It's more so about people who are skilled professionals. And with that, you see that when it comes to Eris, when it comes to Richard, I'm still so confused how to pronounce his name in English. And then when it comes to Rudy, you've seen how much they've grown under Richard's tutelage. Or even when it comes to Rudy, how much his practicing, how much his learning new spells is really starting to come to the point where he isn't just not a protege, not a prophet, not a genius. Oh, I forgot the word, but you know what I mean. Not that he's just exemplary when it comes to magic because he doesn't need incantations, but he's really starting to come to that point where he definitely isn't the top magician or mage in the world, but you can tell that with him being, 14, 15 at the time. Imagine if he goes off to university. Imagine if he gets to really travel the world without it being some type of quest or him being displaced, and all the things he could learn. He could be one of the top mages ever in existence. And through these battles, the one he has with Dragon God and with another gentleman whose name is completely blanking out on me, it just shows all this time spent isn't just him wandering around like how Paul makes it seem and like not really doing much, but he is growing as a person. He's growing as a mage and pretty much fulfilling all that Zenith could ever wish for him to be. And not just him, but Eris is also getting very good at it through training with Rujid, and again with the Dragon God, you get to see how good she has become. And while I wouldn't say it presents to you the top action scenes you have ever seen in an anime, when it comes to this show, it definitely keeps reminding you that this show is able to touch on multiple different elements or genres and do them fairly well. The next highlight is Eris's growth, especially since part 1, season 1, Kerr 1, whatever you prefer. Back then, Eris was definitely someone who kind of seemed stunted because, she was, for lack of a better term, royalty, and everybody bend to her will. And due to that, she gained the kind of attitude her grandfather had, where she was definitely very iron fist, cruel at times, and seemingly it's not until Rudy came into her life that wall started to get broken down. And by the time we get into the second part, season, whatever, she finally starts to learn what it means to have empathy, to be vulnerable, and you get two very good examples of this, maybe three. The first deals with Ghislaine's people, the dog people, and how she handles one of those people, I think Ghislaine's niece, and how she deals with having issues with her father. Eris gets involved with this, and you can see a sort of empathy for strangers that you would never expect her to have before. And then later on, when it comes to Paul and Rudy reconnecting, we see Eris not just get angry for Rudy, but then try to console him. And granted, she needs a little bit of coaching to do so, but in seeing those two together and Rudy just breaking down and Eris trying to console him and like pet him and whatnot, it really shows her evolution, not just in the battle scenes that we just mentioned and her getting stronger, but emotionally and mentally getting stronger as well. Which, when it comes to toward the end of the season and she learns about what happened with her family, it really gives you like a full arc when it comes to this character. And it makes you wonder, when it comes to possibly another season, part, whatever, where may they go from here, especially as Rudy is going in a completely different direction with his storyline. The next highlight is Paul and Rudy's relationship, and especially their reconciliation. Throughout, I think it's like a 2-episode situation, Rudy and Paul reconnect, and it's just a volatile reconnection. One that even gets violent to the point where you can kind of see that Rudy has surpassed his father when it comes to strength and could potentially in that fight have killed him. Yet, he doesn't, and you can tell that there's a lot of mixed feelings between the two. Both want to have some kind of relationship with one another, but they don't know how. Rudy, because of his past and everything that happened after he was bullied, he doesn't really know how to reconcile with people. He knows how to have fights, how to cut people off, and then close himself off. But when it comes to actually talking to somebody after they have issues and like getting to a good place with them, he doesn't know how to do that. And in many ways, you can say the same about Paul, since while he did kind of recover things with Zenith and even Lilia to at some point, even after all he done to both of them, is it Lilia or Aisha? The maid. I keep forgetting which one's her name. I keep getting them mixed up. Point is, like with Rudy, it seems that Paul never really reconciled with his family, but whether it's his parents or even his brother. And you can tell with both of them, through each other, they have learned so much about reconciliation, about father-son relationships, and just figuring out how to bond with somebody when they don't meet your expectations or even meet your needs in that moment. Because one of the things that those two kind of struggle with is not just conflict, but also communication. Especially communication when it's, I won't say communication when it's optional, but communication when you know that your feelings are involved. Yet, thanks to a man named Geese that Rudy met when he was with Ghislaine's people, the two reconnect in a way that I would say is probably the moment that's going to make you cry the most this season, even though this season definitely has quite a few emotional moments that will get you in your feelings. Speaking of getting you in your feelings, alongside Eris growing so much this season, we also have Rudy growing so much this season. And I would even highlight the last 2 or 3 episodes, which shows you and really reminds you how far he has come. In part 1, season 1, Cur 1, I don't know why I keep doing that, but whatever. The beginning, we saw that Rudy was definitely somebody who was still very much shell-shocked by all the bullying until Roxy kind of broke him out of that shell. Towards the end of the show, something happens which kind of traumatizes Rudy all over again, which puts him back in the shell. But the difference is as we see through the recaps, he's no longer somebody without the tools, without the ability to get himself out of his own funk. He's actually able to do so on his own now, and I won't say it's a top tier emotional moment, but considering how long we've been with Rudy since maybe the beginning of this year, to see him go from this little scared kid to this person who's still barely a teenager yet has all this emotional growth, it gets you in your feelings and really makes you hope that, unfortunately, unlike with the first season, yada yada yada, they don't tell you that there's going to be an additional season coming, but hopefully within a couple of weeks, months, hopefully not a year, they'll let us know that we're going to get more of this, since the way this season ends, you know what's coming next, and you know there's still storylines left to be done. Honestly, when it comes to on the fence topics, there's only one, it's the same one from the part one, and that's just reconciling how old Rudy is actually when you combine his former age with his current body age and what he does. And of course, when I say this, I'm talking about everything he does with Eris, whether it's trying to play with one of her nipples when it comes to things, or even a situation those two have toward a later part of the season, which is like, if you are able to let go of how Rudy is in his past life combined with his present life, it can be seen as a sweet moment, which does lead to a rather sad situation, but with Eris possibly being Rudy's first love of some type of way, especially in terms of them doing something physical, it can be seen as sweet, but I can't get past the fact that Rudy, as a combined age of 30 or 40 some years old, yet he's messing around with this girl who's barely 16. It just weirds me out way too much to think of it as cute or acceptable. Even with that little critique or maybe personal issue, Jobless Reincarnation is probably one of the best shows I've watched this year, whether they're calling animated shows or live action. Positive, watch this, recommended. Only real issue that I can think of when I'm thinking about part one and part two is just Rudy's age. Separate that, it makes all the itchy still a little bit creepy because of, Rudy's a perv, but it'll make it a bit more acceptable in a